horror, fear, despair. Green River Killer. Wait, what?
All the girlies say I'm pretty fly for a white guy.
What am I doing with my life, man? What am I doing? I thought I was done with this. I don't need to do these anymore. I'm done. I'm out. I'm out. And yet I keep getting pulled back in for one last job. Well, let's get to it then. So, here's a bit of trivia. Who is the most prolific serial killer in American history? If you said Jeffrey Dahmer or Ed Gein, you're wrong. It's actually Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. Officially, he killed around 49 women, although he confessed to over 70 or more. They were all prostitutes, which he would all strangle and rape them both before and after death, and dump all their bodies in and around the Green River. He was finally caught and arrested in 2001, where he is now serving 48 consecutive life sentences. Now, I don't know what is a greater human tragedy. That man's life and events, or this movie. Green River Killer, which is a very apt title, I suppose, for a movie about the Green River Killer, is another film directed by Uli Lommel, or Lommel, or Lamel, or I don't really care. Uli Lommel is the director of The Boogeyman, which I have had the good grace of never knowing about and never seen. But, unfortunately, I have seen another one of Uli's films, and that's The Tomb, which personally I think is one of the worst films I've ever seen. I would say The Tomb is worse than The Green River Killer, because The Tomb has no sense of direction whatsoever. I'm not sure if this was before or after it, but it at least has some... It actually has a plot. It actually has a plot, which it blows my mind, but I guess it's because they based it on real events. Well, I mean, you know, it's the usual kind of Mangg's movie problems. You get to a point where you get so bad of a film that it kind of enters like a black hole where no criticism can really escape it. There's nothing I could say that would really be funny about it. Well, I'm going to try, but we'll see. So, Green River Killer follows the events of the Green River Killer. And if I were to ask you to make a movie about a serial killer, you'd probably have a basic plot in mind. You know, you'd probably follow the police and cut between them and the killer as he continues to kill and they're hot on his trail and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, the Green River Killer, that's not really the case, both in the movie or in real life. They didn't catch him until almost 20 years after his murders. So, yeah, most of the film follows Gary Ridgway as he commits prostitute murders. Great. Half the movie is pretty much the worst porno you've ever seen. And the other half is just one of the worst movies you've ever seen. So it's a real good combo. Gary Ridgway, like I said, throughout his life, or at least, you know, throughout a few years, murdered at least 70 women, probably closer to 100. So how many does the movie show? 4. Which for a slasher movie, I guess, if you want to call it that, it's a rather low body count, but for a movie about the Green River Killer, that's actually probably about right. Because pretty much every single murder was the exact same. Like, Gary Ridgway does not go down in history as the most creative serial killer. Pretty much every victim was a prostitute that he picked up, lured into his trust, and then pretty much raped them without paying them, which I guess is like stealing as well. Strangled them. Sometimes he varied it up and used like a cord. And then he had sex with them some more. And then he dumped them in the river. And that's how the movie goes. The first victim, just is kind of like right at the start of the movie. And he's just kind of like watching her shower and stuff. And then she takes a shit.
I have to take a shit first. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, leave.
And she asks if he wants to wipe her ass.
Want to wipe my ass?
I guess if that's like a normal request, I wouldn't know. And, they do stuff. And then he strangles her, I guess. And, Gary Ridgway was supposedly like a somewhat persuasive guy. Like, he lured these women into trusting him. But, the guy in the movie didn't seem very persuasive. He never said anything that I felt was, like, persuading me to.
Playing with yourself.
Wait, what? Why? That's... No. Why would I...
Take a pee.
What? No, why would I... That's gross. Get out. You can't just say something and I'll do it.
Piss.
All right. Well, anyways, Gary Ridgway in real life looks like 70s porno version of Gary Oldman. And Gary Ridgway in the movie looks like 70s porno version of Liam Neeson. So I guess that works out. But they don't really look anything alike, so that's odd. And throughout the movie, they kind of intersplice various parts with actual recordings of Gary Ridgway talking to the police in an interview or an interrogation or whatever.
I think I killed some, I don't know how many in the other truck.
Okay.
One of the first 10 or so.
First 10 that you did.
I'm just guessing 10.
Relatively early on in the series.
Yes. Because the first 7 I did were in the river.
Okay.
Which is interesting and fine, because that's like, you get this picture, you get this video of this guy who's very kind of calm and collected talking about these murders he's done. It's kind of chilling. But the problem is, they continue the narration, the voiceover of Gary Ridgway, but they use their voice, they use their actor instead of Gary Ridgway.
It was at 13. Yeah, I think I stabbed a little boy, but I forgot why.
And they don't sound anything alike, so you can immediately tell the difference between calm, cool, collected, chilling Gary Ridgway and a guy doing a bad Jigsaw impression from Saw. So, pretty much, whenever it cuts to the actor doing the voiceover, you know that whatever he's saying is absolute bullshit and never happened in real life. So that's at least kind of handy. Gary Ridgway never had a kid, but for some reason in the movie they decided to have a kid named Kevin, who apparently lived in his bathroom. He never leaves the bathroom, and he just reads in there. And his mom is like always gone, so Gary, his dad, just feeds him popcorn for dinner.
What did he make you?
Popcorn.
Popcorn? That's not a real dinner. Do you want french fries with ketchup? Okay.
So that's nice. The second victim that Gary kills, he kills her in like a nice RV or something, which, you know, for a guy that works at a packing company, that's pretty nice. And she actually, like, manages to get away from him for a moment and get his gun. For some reason he has a gun, even though he strangles them all. She gets the gun away from him, and he's like, oh, shit. But she royally screws up, and he still ends up strangling her, because, you know, he's Gary Ridgway. He's good at what he does. Then the third victim, like, he brings her home to his home. His wife's supposed to be gone, but, oh, she shows up. Oh, no, what is Gary Ridgway supposed to do? Well, he shoves her in the bathroom and closes the door. And you think, oh, it's going to be kind of this tense moment where, oh, they hopefully, you know, they don't find this prostitute in the bathroom. But, no, she just walks right out. Like, oh, you know, Gary's just like, what the shit are you doing? And she tries to play it off like she's his cousin Louise.
Hi, I'm Louise from Portland. Remember Gary's cousin, Louise? I was just about to go back to the bus stop, so... Gary, can you take me back?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, honey, this is my cousin Louise, who's dressed like a hooker and is in our bathroom and you've never heard of. I'm gonna go take her to the airport. And of course he doesn't take her to the airport, if that's what you were wondering. He takes her to a real seedy looking place that happens to have a mattress on the ground. And, you know, the usual. Like, pretty much every kill that he does is the exact same. It's not like watching Friday the 13th Part 4 or something, where it's like, oh, how is Jason Voorhees going to do some interesting kills this time? No. If they made Green River Killer 6, it would still be Gary Ridgway just like, yeah. So apart from all the usual problems that I don't need to mention because I've repeated myself like 50 times now throughout every Mangg's movie, you know the drill. You know, the voiceovers that the actor does as Gary Ridgway are pretty lame because he just talks about like random stuff that doesn't have anything to do with anything in the world, and then he immediately goes to like repeating the names of his victims.
I mean, look at the Seahawks, right? Or what's the Raiders? Just look at the Raiders, and they used to be a great team back in the '80s. Doris Kuhn, Kim Willard.
So I don't know how that works. And then, at one point, he starts talking about this whole thing with his friend Boris, who, like, taught him everything he knew about killing prostitutes, and inspired him to do all this. But at one point in the film, he says that as a kid, he paid some girl to play with him, which I assume means in a Gary Ridgway kind of way. And he also mentions stabbing some boy. So, I don't think Boris taught you everything you know, bro, because it seems like you've been this way for a little while. Oh, I'm remembering stuff because I'm trying to not block it all out, but I'm failing. Remember Cousin Louise, which wasn't Cousin Louise? His wife actually believed it.
And what about this cousin of yours? What was that all about?
So how does it end? How does the legacy of Gary Ridgway end? Well, it actually is. I mean, overall, I guess it's a fairly faithful retelling of Gary Ridgway's life, aside from the whole son and the massive amounts of shit everywhere. It's fairly faithful. It cuts to 20 years later, and they do their DNA testing finally on all this stuff successfully, and there's text on screen to tell you the story of what happened to Gary Ridgway, and so they show up at his house to arrest him.
Gary Ridgway, you're going down. You're under arrest.
And you know how some movies nowadays use like CGI to make actors look older or younger or stuff like that? Well, Green River Killer, Uli Lommel, does not have that kind of money, so they just like put him in a hat, and he's 20 years older now. So of course, he gets arrested and he goes through the whole court system, blah blah blah. And his lawyer is like the best part of the movie. I love the lawyer scene. Because it's like, his lawyer's like, sure, Gary has a problem with prostitutes. Sure, he'll be the first to admit. But he didn't kill any of them.
The man is innocent. Sure, he's had some problems with the prostitutes. He doesn't object to that accusation. But he didn't kill any.
And then it's like, well, sure, you found some semen on one of the prostitutes, but he wasn't the last one to do anything. He wasn't the last one. He's a good guy.
You may have found his semen on or inside their bodies. Gary hates condoms. He admits to that. But he wasn't the last one.
And then it's like, well, sure, you found his semen on every single prostitute, all 49 of them that were killed. That doesn't mean anything. You can't prove anything from that. And then it's like, well, we're going to be fighting the death penalty.
I've discussed it with my client. And he is willing to cooperate if you can assure him that the death penalty will be pulled and not considered.
Yeah. And so it ends with him serving 48 consecutive life sentences, and that's the film. So, yeah, I guess that's about it. I don't know. Maybe my heart is no longer in this. Maybe this is the end of Mangg's movies. Maybe this is the final one. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've already served 48 consecutive life sentences of Mangg's movies. Do I really need to do any more? Can we really dig up any more trash that's worse than this? Worse than The Tomb? Worse than Axum? Let's hope not. Cut, cut, cut. Boogle, you can't come into the shot.